All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to the Making Seamless Sales Show. Whether you're listening live or listening to a replay of the show on any of our channels, please drop a note in the chat. Please like, subscribe, share, and also feel free to go on the website and drop a question in there if you'd like for the Dear Artie section of our program. We're coming here tonight pre-recorded from Mars, Pennsylvania, for two reasons. Number one, my guest is in Germany, so it would be 1 a.m. for him if he was live. And number two, because I was attending the Dreamforce conference in San Francisco all week, which is Salesforce's huge user and partner conference. I was attending as an independent software vendor, or ISV, representing my sales opportunity snapshot methodology. So, as such, I was able to talk with a variety of different people and share with them what this enterprise grade Salesforce app can do. And by the way, if that's of interest to you, check out the details on my website, teamsalesdevelopment.com. In this episode 11 of the Making Seamless Sales Show with special guest Nikhil Sarma, who specializes in helping sales teams with value discovery, what we're going to talk about is the importance of this as the key place to start that drives the entire buyer and sales engagement through to client success and expansion. So we'll get to Nikhil shortly. Stay tuned to that. I'm Art Fromm, founder and president of Team Sales Development, and this is a platform for sharing actionable and proven sales transformation frameworks and systems for pre-sales and the sales community, and more so as we move along the enablement community, the customer success community, and things like that. This is all based on me having been a customer of technology for about 8 years, then 10 years in pre-sales, sales, and sales management roles, leading to 25 years focused on sales transformation, helping B2B companies. And yes, I can work with other type of companies and teams as well. The sweet spot is complex B2B sales, helping them increase revenue, win rate, client satisfaction, and so forth. So in this show and the book of the same name, I've curated key interconnected concepts across the entire consultative selling platform that I offer, ranging from great demo to mastering technical sales to sales opportunity snapshot. And I mention those three in particular because Peter, John, and Steve all allowed me to use parts of this in the book and also wrote forwards and so much more, including selling to executives and many other parts of the portfolio. So tonight we're going to dive deeper into team selling and the interplay between pre-sales solutions team and the sales team. Before we get into tonight's show with Nikhil, a big thanks to last week's guest on episode 10, which was October 9th, Yumi Peterson. It was great to get Yumi's insights based on her experience in developing and managing SDR, BDR, as well as field sales roles. So a couple highlights if you want to go back and watch that show. Why deals stall before they even start. Yumi revealed how misalignment between SDRs and sales and pre-sales quietly kills momentum long before the customer says no. And what are the signs for that? We also talked about reducing internal friction and instead driving sales velocity. So rather than pointing fingers, Yumi walked through how to build and empower every role from SDRs driving discovery to pre-sales, connecting technical value to the business value. And then third thing, the major thing was the leadership mindset behind the seamless sales execution. What great sales leaders do differently to create accountability, communication, and trust across the teams. So her presentation and our discussion was a masterclass in leading through alignment, not through hierarchy. And that's a very important distinction as far as the reasons why what she does is so successful. So you can access last week's show and information about all the episodes, as well as many more resources at teamsalesdevelopment.com. If you take a look under the events and articles tab, there's many resources there. In fact, quick update, the photos and video of the NASDAQ Billboard event have been posted. So if you want to take a look at that, it's there. Also, information about the Pre-Sales Collective podcast that I was on. September 24th is when that was released. It was with Jack Cochran and Matthew James. I've received dozens of connection requests and many, many comments about that interview. Many commented that it's a must listen. So go to the webpage, teamsalesdevelopment.com, check out the events page, and find the Pre-Sales Collective podcast. I know that you'll get a lot out of it, but I'd love to hear what you think. And then finally, one other thing, if you would please, on the page is the pre-registration for the upcoming Blue Talks compilation book that I'll be in. I have a chapter in there called The Art of Persuasion, and it's going to feature John Gray, who's the author of Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. So please check that out and pre-order the book so that you can be one of the first to get it and benefit from that. All right, so on to tonight's show. One of the main things that we're going to be discussing with Nikhil is the concept of a value discovery map. And this is what documents the engagement with stakeholders through the entire buying process. So whenever I say stakeholder, I think you all know this. I mean somebody that has a stake in the decision process. And that can range from high-level executives to people that are implementing or even in IT. And Nikhil covers the entire buying process journey from awareness all the way through to expansion, as well as different stakeholder needs, such as functional pains, all the way to key business results for the high-level executives. The thing that is significant here is the importance of uncovering specific value for each stakeholder in the decision process. Now, to help set the stage for our discussion, I've got some good news and some bad news. So listen up, sales reps who are trying to help the buyer through their buying journey, and listen up, pre-sales who are working to persuade technical and business decision makers. This is going to apply to everybody, and management and sales enablement as well. So first, we'll start with the somewhat good news. Doing discovery to find out what solution to provide and allow us to offer a quote is the easy part. Let's just call it low-hanging fruit. When it comes to all the things that we're doing in a sales role, that's fairly easy. Now, I'm not saying that it's trivial. It still takes the right amount of discovery to determine the correct solution. We know the drill. You've heard it many times before. No selling or demoing before discovery, right? We've previously discussed this with Jerry Timmis in episode 8, with Peter Cohan in episode 9, and it's a central theme of this show and the book of the same name, Making Seamless Sales. In fact, here's the sad reality. We may 100% have the right solution, and the client might even like it. They may love it. This is often referred to as the much bandied about technical win. Now, I remember many times as a young SE, we'd deliver a well-prepared kick butt demo where the audience was just gasping in awe. And we showed without a doubt that we can address the client's requirements for a technology solution that meets their needs. During the demo, they'd say they love it, this is amazing, and all the rest of the wonderful things that were happily ringing in our ears. We'd high five because we nailed the demo. And then nothing happened. While the technical win may have been achieved, and it's a wonderful step, it's only part of the outcome we need to generate as a seamless sales team. So here's the bad news. The technical win might seem like we can easily capture low-hanging fruit. And frankly, if you think about it, this is why sales all too often pushes pre-sales to just show a demo. The idea is that, they're going to see the solution, they're going to like it, they're going to buy it. That is not the case. In order to have a bountiful harvest, especially for complex B2B sales, we need to start by navigating the tree to which it's attached, or the vine, or whatever metaphor you want to use. But that low-hanging fruit might not be the fruit that's the best for us and for them. And in fact, even if we think we have it nailed, it may not come to fruition. Oh, I just thought of that. That's pretty bad. That's a bad dad joke right there. So the decision process and uncovering the stakeholders and all the nuances of the branches and vines that make up them holding on to that so supposedly low-hanging fruit is really what we need to focus on. And that's the hard part. It takes a lot more discovery to determine the buyer's decision process and how to impact it. And we need to do that in order for the buyer to give us the win. Somebody recently just said, we don't generate the win in sales. It's the buyer that gives us the win. So write it down and put it somewhere to memorize it and keep going over it. It takes a lot more discovery to determine the buyer's decision process and how to impact it for us to give them the win. And it needs to be an opportunity team effort, pre-sales, sales, even customer success working together. Now, I get into this a lot more in my Seamless Sales book and in the Sales Opportunity Snapshot methodology. Nikhil's going to help us today with the value discovery map, as I mentioned. Here's a few things to dig into deeper for complex sales, just to set the stage. So, for example, beyond the technical win, what is the competitive landscape, including do nothing? And what is our strategy to counteract it? We are not the only ones shaking the branches to see what falls out. Who are the key decision makers and influencers with the myriad perceptions regarding total cost of ownership, risk of moving forward, weighing that against the value that they perceive? How about development of a financially sound value proposition, which means we need to qualify and quantify the value in order to pass muster with the financial analysts, including potentially the CFO. Understanding the impact of the flow of influence, nominally that the decision maker not only says they like what they saw, but that they have selected us at the exclusion of the alternatives. By the way, this is in the book. It's called Technical Close. It goes beyond technical win. They've selected us at the exclusion of the alternatives, including do nothing, and they're recommending us to the business decision maker. And they both agree on how it will help with the business decision maker's outcomes and goals. That's what I call technical close leading to business close. So these are the factors that make or break the deal, that reduce friction in the buying process and allow us to turn the sales funnel into a sales pipeline, increasing win rate and revenues. Showing the solution is merely hope as a strategy. This is so important that 3 of the 9 criteria in the sales opportunity snapshot, one whole segment, is dedicated to the client's decision process. Criteria number 7 is the ability for us to impact the decision process. Number 8 is finding and leveraging an executive with credibility and support. And number 9, which we talked about on episode 2 with Steve Bistritz, was about the relevant executive. So just before we come up to the break here, I just want to say many methodologies give lip service to the buying process. Some have a simple checkbox, such as economic buyer, but if you ask 5 different people, they'll have 5 different definitions of that because it wraps up too many attributes in one. What's their paper process? What's their decision process? Some of you might even be creating a chart of key stakeholders and assigning things like champion or mobilizer. In the methodology, we discover, document, and track the criteria for making sure we know the decision process. And that's what you're going to see right after the break as we explore Nikhil's value discovery map, which does an excellent job of determining what stakeholders perceive as value. The bottom line, discovery that only uncovers the technical solution is not going to win. We want to make sure that we understand the decision process as well. So we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll dig into this with Nikhil. See you back in a couple minutes.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a purpose-driven individual looking for deeper healing, clarity, and growth? Welcome to the Expansion Room, a transformative space for purpose-driven individuals. I'm Siobhan Larice, host, licensed therapist, and coach. Join me every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And I'd like to introduce to you Nikhil Sarma. So, Nikhil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Art. Hello. It's an honor to be here. I've had such wonderful conversations with you over the past several months, and I loved reading your book. This is and everything that you said in the introduction that holds so true. I was kind of behind the scenes over here, but cheering on with every word that you said. So yeah, definitely of the same mind over here. Hello to everyone who's listening. My name is Nikhil Sarma. I run a company called GTM Solutions Consulting. Primarily work with pre-sales and sales teams, frontline teams, and I coach them on the fundamentals of buyer enablement. So what does that mean? That means really taking the buyer's perspective, really understanding why do they need to change? Why do they need to do anything different from what they're doing today? How do they build a business narrative, a value narrative, and how do they take that and help drive decisions internally? And that is the job of everyone who's in sales, whether your title is an AE or an SE or CS or even an SDR.
Absolutely. And by the way, so just a little bit more background too, because Nikhil has 20 years building and selling cutting edge technology. So he's been around the block a few times, from billion-dollar companies like Dolby to scale ups and startups like Optimizely, Lowfelt, which was acquired by Meta, which is really cool, and Contentful. So there's experience here in terms of what you're doing. What just briefly describe then in terms of let's talk about the value discovery map that you've implemented. And the key thing to the value discovery map is the why, the what, and the how. So tell us, how did you land on that, and give us a quick introduction to those three elements, which we're going to dig into deeper here in this
Sure.
section, the next segment.
Sure. So as Simon Sinek says, let's start with the why, right? And here's a simple exercise for anyone who's listening, right? I'll ask you three questions. One, if, do you sometimes struggle to articulate why your customer needs to do anything differently from what they're doing today, let alone why they need to buy your software, right? The second question is, do you sometimes, or do you or your team do demo after demo, spend 6 to 12 months selling software, running POCs, working through an RFP only to have the deal stall? And the third question is, as a leader, do you skip forecast after forecast? I mean, do you find that really difficult? Now, if you've answered yes to any of these three questions, maybe one or more of them, then you or your team are having a really hard time figuring out the why. Why should this company change? Why should this company invest time, effort, money in handling, in managing a change management project? Ultimately, that's what any change is, right? And why would so why should they do anything about that now, right? So these are fundamental questions that any company needs to answer, right? And if we don't understand the why, then we are going to be in trouble. This is where we see deals stall. So the value discovery map, basically it provides three insights, right? Why does something, what is the strategic reason to change? That is the why. Then what is the next level? So for the affected departments, what does that actually mean in terms of the metrics that they are responsible to deliver to the business? Right? So these typically take the form of KPIs. And then at the operational level, how is the new world going to operationally look different from what they do today? Right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was just going to say, just to go back to what you initially said, if we can't even articulate that, how can we even expect them to understand that? So
Yeah.
it sounds like what the value map is doing is allowing us to explore what we think that they should know, and then allows us to do that for them. I just wanted to get that in because I was like, yeah, if I don't even know why, how can I get them to feel compelled to do something different?
Yes, and that's exactly the reason. A lot of people that we speak to, especially at the initial stage of the deal, they have a burning problem. They may have a burning problem in their department, and they have an idea of what they would like to see be different. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to articulate that to their CEO or to their CFO. And ultimately, for a purchasing decision to happen, when a company decides to spend money on something, they are going to have to ensure that it aligns to their business priorities for the year or for the short term,
Mhm.
right? So every company has 1,000 problems at any given point of time. There are a lot of competing interests. So it's essential for us when we spend our time, effort, and money working with prospects, we help them understand how they are going to benefit, and that is where that term business outcome comes from. And that
Mhm.
is why we say focus on the business outcomes and not on the features.
Hmm. Right. Because I mean, businesses are having, putting up with problems all the time. There's things that aren't the way that they'd like it to be, but they work around it. They throw people at it, or they just put up with it, or they don't even know that there's a possibility that something else could be done. And one of the things we've talked about a lot, on the show, and you and I have talked about, is the idea of a compelling reason for change. Well, that's the why. That's the what are they going to do in the absence of that? So what happens when SDRs, AEs, AMs think they've done discovery? And again, I think, now we're into the deep discovery, right? Not the surface level like I was talking about before. That's needed for the solution, but the deeper level. What happens when they think they've done discovery using a framework like BANT or MEDDIC, but they've missed the true why? How does that impact the opportunity?
Yeah. Let me backtrack a little bit over here. So the why, what, and the how, they map really nicely to how most companies are actually structured. So the why maps very well to C-levels and senior executives in a company. That is where the decision-making power lies. The what, which is really the KPIs, what is each department? So take a marketing department or logistics department and operations department. What are they responsible for delivering? That typically tends to be a managerial level. So managers could be anyone carrying a title from a manager all the way to maybe a VP in a large organization, or even in an SVP in a large, very global organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the operational people who are really focused on the how. So when you map these three things, when you map the why, the what, and the how to these three levels, then you have a strong understanding of, of how a decision that affects the operational level, cascades up into what, how, into a business outcome for the company. Now, when you don't understand the why, then a few things happen. So basically, what you're unable to connect is, why should a C-level executive green light a particular project? So now you've been working, let's say, for 6 to 8 months or 9 months on a specific opportunity. There are three possible outcomes. One is your deal stalls. You don't know where it's going, so you've been doing demo after demo. You think, you're hearing really good things from a person that you have anointed your champion, right? But nothing is actually happening. Your op isn't moving forward. Option number two, there is value erosion. So this is where I see 300K opportunities. So, you've talked to your champion, you say, this is the scope of my opportunities, 300K. And then there is risk. There's a perception of risk. People don't know exactly what to do. If something were to go wrong, they don't know how to handle the change. So now that 300K opportunity becomes a 100K opportunity, because your so-called champion says, you know what, let's start small. Let's make this, instead of a global rollout, let's make this a regional pilot. So that's become 300 to 100K. And then you speak to procurement, and no one is able to defend the value of this project to procurement. So that 100K becomes 75K. So you've taken a 300K opportunity in your forecast, it's closed at 75K. Now you might say, I've got a foot in the door, but could you have got a much larger, gap over there? Could you have had a larger footprint in that organization? Possibly, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about potentially losing the op, or stalling, or closing at a much smaller value. The third opportunity, or the third option over here, sorry, is that you just lose the deal. And you lose the deal to two potential options. One, you lose the deal to, the status quo, right? What John calls "do nothing incorporated," right? And
Yeah.
that's a very
Yep.
important thing. And the other option is that you are not you've lost it to a competitor who's bending over backwards for to get that logo.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Yeah, and you mentioned a bunch of key things there, just before we go to the break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about what to do about it. But the perception of risk and the fact that this can tip the scale the wrong direction, as I showed in the book, that is huge.
Yeah.
And then the risk is different at each level too. Sometimes it's personal risk, sometimes it's business risk, risk of picking the right solution. There's a lot to be said there. And those deeper levels of discovery and the value discovery map can help us uncover the things that would say, here's some risk, let's manage the perception of risk so the scale tips in our favor. We're lightening the load of the risk that would tend to tip it against us. Excellent. When we come back, we'll talk more about, okay, so what is the solution? How does the map help beyond just what the customer wants? We'll be right back. Misalignment within your sales team or with the client stalls deals and creates unnecessary friction for you and the client, resulting in up to 37% lower win rate. If you're in pre-sales, sales management, or sales enablement, and you'd like to increase revenues, win rate, margins, client satisfaction, and stay competitive, this show is for you. Hi, I'm Art Fromm, host of the Making Seamless Sales Show. Please join me live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey, everybody, it's Tommy D, the Nonprofit Sector Connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back, everybody. And again, we're talking with Nikhil Sarma, and we were discussing before the break the concerns about, well, first of all, what is the what, the how, and the why, and then the concerns if we don't know that. So what I want to talk about right now is, Nikhil, is how does the value discovery map help sales and pre-sales move beyond just what the customer needs to also uncover the why, and then how they'll use the solution to generate business value.
Yeah. So I think the fundamental thing is a buyer enablement mindset is primarily an empathetic approach, right? What we have stakeholders at these three levels. What do we need to give them to move forward, to drive action? Right? So we know that operational people, they are focused on getting things done more efficiently. Managers care about efficiency of resources, right? The team, the money that they have at their disposal. And at the C levels are really thinking about efficiency at a company level. So how are they competing better? How are they operating better? How are they managing costs better? So discovery, this process of discovery is, as you said in the intro, it is not only about, what features do they require, and how can we get a little bit of rudimentary information so that we can say this is going to help you do something a little bit faster or a little bit better. Discovery is really about what each of these stakeholders discovers about their own organization. Right? There are competing interests at any given point of time, and we live in a very, very volatile time at the moment. Economically, there is a lot of uncertainty. So at a time when there is so much uncertainty in the markets and in the employment space, let's spare a little bit of thought for our buyers. It's very hard today to stick your hand up and say, look, I think we should be doing something differently. And Gartner has some really good research on this. So 74% of buying committees exhibit an unhealthy level of conflict in when they're making a decision. What does this mean? This has nothing to do with a specific vendor. This conflict is about, are they even solving the right problem? Is this the time to be solving that problem? So the value discovery map basically helps AEs and SEs figure out, okay, I'm speaking to someone in, say, the marketing department. What is going on in the technical team? What is going on at a level above the person that we are speaking with? And how do we connect to their interests? And these interests are expressed, values expressed for them in different ways. Values expressed at the operational level in terms of time, at the managerial level in terms of resources, that is the teams that are involved, and at a C level in terms of money.
Hmm.
So when you start to build this map out, you have an understanding of where the risk lies and where the opportunity lies for this company. And that it helps us when we connect these three levels, build a value narrative. Okay? Yeah.
So you, and this is why I wanted to have you on here, is that you coach sales and pre-sales together rather than in silos. And you just mentioned about the confusion about the buyer committee alone, and then if they've got different things coming from different people. So how does that joint approach help with teams identifying the gaps and then making sure that when they walk into a critical meeting, they are helping with buyer enablement and moving that forward?
Yeah. I think one of the most frustrating experiences that I ever had was sitting at SKO, knowing that the AEs were all in the room next door, and they, they were being trained on discovery, and all
If
of
you're
us
even at
SEs,
if you're even at SKL, that's the
yes, it,
thing. I mean, at least that apparently with that company, you as a SE were there. But yes, now the sales are
yeah,
in the other room. What are they doing, or why are we here? Please continue.
exactly.
I'm reliving this with you.
Yeah, and I see that a lot in trainings as well. So it's AEs being trained separately from SEs. I think what happens is that we don't have, we're unable to strategize together, and this is what leads to a lot of finger pointing because we are made to live in silos. Even if the corporate messaging is that we want to break these silos down, the way training is done is in silos. So when I speak to CROs and VPs of enablement, for example, I always encourage them to train their AEs and SEs together. It helps them strategize better. It helps them communicate better. It helps them lead with the customer's best interest at heart, right? And that is the fundamental shift that we see. It's very hard for AEs and SEs, many of whom have actually never sold or never worked with the technologies that they sell,
Yeah.
to then put themselves in the shoes of their customers and understand, what is going on. And you don't have to do all the hard work. I think the most important thing is the curiosity to really understand. You put yourself in their shoes,
Hmm.
and say, okay, what do I as the buyer need to have the confidence to go to my CFO and ask for money?
Hmm. Right.
And and yeah, and it's not yet another feature. It's not a slick demo. None of that is going to help you.
Mhm.
All those things are important. They're necessary, but they're not a sufficient condition for you to move your deal forward.
Yeah, they're part of the means to the end, but the end is client success, and it's
Yes.
about what it does for them.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah. And so the
go ahead.
evidence I see is that I see AEs and SEs qualifying better, they're executing better, and they're able to forecast better. I think that is the key thing. So I recently ran a Q4 forecast for one of the clients that I'm working with. I joined one of their Q4 forecasts, and they're speaking this language. So they have a good sense now of how, what they need to do to close their opportunities in Q4 because they understand what the executive priorities at this company, at the prospects they're selling to, what that executive priority is, right?
Mhm.
Where previously they were just focused on what does the head of technology need from me?
Hmm. Yeah, and that can only go so far because now we're relying on that person to try to sell it internally, and we're also relying on you talked earlier about champion. Sometimes we get hooked into somebody that thinks that they're championing our cause when it turns out they're really just the person that happens to be most involved, and there might not even be a project there.
Yeah.
So I like the idea about as sales and pre-sales working together as a team on an opportunity and the ability to traverse the entire what I would call the needs pyramid. That's how I showed in the book of from high level down to the lower levels. And yes, Is the SE always calling on C level? No, not necessarily. Should they know what the C level wants? Absolutely. Same thing for sales. Is the salesperson doing the demo and putting together the features and functions and how it provides business outcomes? Not necessarily. They don't need that level, but they should know how to connect it up to the higher level.
Yes.
So what you're saying, and studies prove this out, is that working together like that allows us to see things even the client can't see themselves. I think there's tremendous value in that. So when you've seen, the specific internal and customer facing outcomes that you've experienced when teams are focused on the buyer's needs, um, what are those outcomes? What does that look like? What does it do for them? We're talking about us as far as increasing win rate and all that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
How about for them, and maybe even go back to the idea of the perception of risk and being afraid of raising their hand? How can that help
Yeah.
them through that?
I think so. So what this does for them is, first of all, you're going to identify one or two people who could be potential champions. I love the term mobilizer from the challenger sale. That is really who I would want to see. But even if you have someone who really, who's championing your cause over there, how are you equipping them to go and sell when you're not in the room?
Hmm.
That is 80% of the sale today,
Yeah.
right? And how are you de-risking this for them? How are you enabling them to see the potential risk? There is always risk in every single project, right?
Hmm.
And so this is also where we bring in our professional services teams or a partner, for example, to talk to them about, here is your path to success. So from the recordings that I see of customers when AEs and SEs approach it, in this value discovery method, I see their prospects leaning in. I see them co-creating these value discovery maps. I see them co-creating a narrative that they feel confident to take to their bosses, right? And if you're very likely going to have two or three competitors towards the end of any opportunity, how are you going to stick out in the sales process when there's
Hmm.
feature parity? And one of the ways you do this is by showing up in a different way, showing up in a way that is empathetic and also allows them to identify the risks. And you do this really beautifully in your book. I would highly recommend people read your book, and specifically chapter 7, where you talk about how risk and TCO can sometimes, tip the scales away from you, even when when you've been successful in showing value through your demos or through your stories, right? So that is the fundamental way I would say AEs and SEs, can by using this approach help your contacts and your champions at the company sell internally.
Hmm. Yeah, and then they look like a hero, and then they can often get resources that they weren't able to get because they're selling internally. And at a highest level, they're not thinking about you versus your competitors. They're thinking about other projects
Yes.
entirely. And so internal stakeholders oftentimes have troubles selling upward. This has been excellent. Just in concluding here, a final remark, and then how's the best way to contact you? And by the way, everybody, all this is going to be in the show notes and everything as well, so you can check that out. But final remarks before I say thank you and we sign off on this segment.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, Art. And yeah, please, yeah, here's, if you're listening to this before the end of Q4 and you've got your opportunities, keep this one thing in mind. Do you know how you're connecting to the CEO's priorities or the board's priorities at the prospect that you're selling to? If you don't have a clear view on that, if you don't have a clear understanding, then your deal is at risk. Thank you so much. My name is Nikhil. The best way to contact me is via LinkedIn. It's a Nikhil Sarma. And you can also check out my website. It's gtmsolutions.co, not .com.co.
CEO. All
Thank
right.
you so much,
Thank
Art.
you so much. Appreciate it. And everybody check it out. And this is another aspect of how you can improve, as Nikhil said, you versus your other people that, other competitors, you will stand out when you use these methods. Thank you so much.
On Frank About Health, we're not just talking healthcare. We're managing disruption and innovation. Over the last 4 years, I've taken you from epilepsy and COVID to mental health, caregiving, and now the front lines of healthcare transformation. Stay tuned for a healthier future as we bring on the innovators, professionals, storytellers, and advocates who show you how to own your healthcare every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Talk Radio.
Cheers!
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And again, thanks so much to Nikhil for sharing his insights about the discovery value map. In this final segment, I do something that I call Dear Artie, which is patterned after the Dear Abby column, where Dear Abby would do advice for people's life situations and challenges. And so I'm offering this up as a segment that can address sales challenges and situations. You are welcome to input into the chat any of your ideas, and then also go to teamsalesdevelopment.com. On the contact page, there's a form that you could fill out and submit your questions. I've pulled some questions from previous that are pertaining to this particular show, and I want to share those with you over the next few minutes and see if you can see yourself in these questions. So the first question is, hi Art, I'm a pre-sales engineer. I'm getting thrown into demos where the AE says they've done discovery, but when I start presenting, it's clear we don't really understand what the customer cares about. Now, by the way, as an aside here, everybody, this is sort of a broken record over and over again. However, I think it's worth revisiting because every time we talk about this, it all goes back to discovery. It's got to go back to discovery. So anyway, they go on to say the customer seems confused or disengaged. How do I handle this without throwing my AE under the bus? So this is definitely one of the most common challenges I hear about. It's why I wrote the book. That's a big part of it. Jerry and I talked about this back on episode 8, where he wanted to do this, and I was the SE manager at the time, and we pushed back. So what I believe is going on here is that the AE, or maybe the SDR, BDR, whoever was involved prior to you getting involved, likely did what they thought was qualification. They checked the box of BANT, MEDDIC, or whatever it was that they're using, but they didn't do the true discovery that we've been talking about today. They didn't discover the why, the next level, the deeper things about the decision process. So before your next demo, I would just recommend, once again, ask your AE very simply, and you're not double checking them, you're not questioning them in terms of did they do their job, but for your own sake, to understand what's going on, what business outcome is the customer trying to achieve? And what happens if they don't solve this problem? That's the why that Nikhil was talking about. Why should they do anything? And the salesperson should be able to articulate that. Even if it's only a theory, even if it's probably because of this, but for me, that's insufficient. At least if you can have a discussion with your salesperson about what is the reason, and then we can clarify that, confirm that, quantify that. So my team, what we used to do is, if the salesperson can't answer you clearly, then we need to do more discovery. And what my team and I used to do was, we would do, if we didn't have enough information, we would just ask, and these are on some bigger deals. So if you're If you're doing, every half hour you're trying to do a demo, you're going to need to refine this a little bit and see if you can turn it around quicker in the course of a call. What we used to do was we did it under the guise of a prep call. And what we did was we just said, well, do you mind if we just talk to the customer to go over some logistics for the demo? And what we really did was turn that into discovery. So we were doing some discovery. And I also want everybody to remember my mantra, which is help me to help you. So why would the salesperson let you do that? Or why would the salesperson feel like they should dig deeper? It's because if you're in pre-sales, the job is to help sales. Pre-sales is there to help you. This is a team sport. That's why 5 years ago, I renamed my company from Technical Sales Development, which is still true because it's a technical sale, but I wanted to specifically focus on the team sales development. So sales, you can benefit from pre-sales. Pre-sales, you can sell sales on how you help them. So it's a help me to help you. We are all trying to help the client. We're trying to achieve client satisfaction, and it has to start at hello. So sometimes we need to sell our sales counterpart on the need for proper discovery. And again, I think some of you heard this before. Maybe this is the first time you're tuning in. I have an article about what I call selling discovery. And that means selling to your salesperson why discovery is important. For sales, it's for you to help sell the customer on why discovery is important because they will often try and shortcut you. Best to do discovery properly. And if it's not a fit, eliminate it at the beginning of the process. Now you can all move on to more productive things. Now, why is this important? Because this disconnect is what's killing deals. It's almost so simple. I can't believe that it isn't being addressed. As the consensus SE survey shows year after year after year, when pre-sales engineers inherit poorly qualified opportunities, which was at least 50% is what the survey showed, they're forced to guess at what matters to the buyer. They're forced to guess at the why. And we may have our own opinion of the why. Like Nikhil said, if you don't even know what the why is, how can we possibly help convey that to the client or get them to understand their why? So these studies show that when teams communicate and work together, compared to those who don't, there's a 30%, 37% difference in the sales results. And that's just left on the table for the taking. Otherwise, we wind up with generic demos that don't resonate, longer sales cycles, and frustrated customers. And that's the last thing we want. It's bad enough if we've got friction in our process, but what we really don't want is for the client to feel the effect of that. So those are a few ideas, again, reinforcing this concept of don't show or sell before discovery. Don't prescribe before doing diagnosis. Now, a similar question came in regarding the competing messages confusing buyers. And this is what Nikhil and I were talking about in terms of the team working together up and down that hierarchy and across the entire buying process so we have a unified amount of information. This is coming from an account manager, account executive. He says, or she says, I'm not sure which, honestly. I'm an account executive. I'm seeing buyers get confused because they're hearing different things from me, my SE, and even the customer success team. The buyer mentioned that they're getting mixed signals, which is pretty amazing that they brought that up. It's a good sign that they did. Apparently, they really wanted to work with you. That doesn't always happen. Usually they just quietly disappear or they make you do a bunch of work that you can't address. And now, you've wasted all this time. So how do we fix this when we're all trying to help? So you've hit on what I would refer to as an anamorphic art problem. Is everybody familiar with anamorphic art? This is where when you look at it one direction, and actually Garen Hess mentioned this in one of his discussions about buyer enablement, it's where you look at a piece of artwork from one perspective and maybe it looks like an elephant, but when you turn it the other direction, it might look like a sunset. So literally it's the same physical thing, but depending on which angle you look at it, it looks different. You could think of it as facets of a diamond or any other analogy that you'd like. Different stakeholders in your organization are seeing the same deal from different perspectives. And we do have a unique perspective because we are seeing the big picture. Oftentimes the stakeholders are only seeing part of it. To them, they only see an elephant, or to other stakeholders, they only see the sunset. we can see the whole work of art and realize that there's a lot more moving parts there than just what they're seeing. So the solution is what I teach in my buyer enablement framework, which is aligning on the customer's needs. And that's what Nikhil talked about with the why, what, and how before anybody talks to the customer. So hold a 15-minute, a 5-minute alignment call. In the old days, back 5 years ago, we used to do this in the parking lot before we went into a customer call. Now, with Zoom and virtual, we need to make that more explicit. Why is it important to them? What are they trying to achieve? How will they measure success? Inconsistent messaging destroys buyer confidence. And remember, our goal is to increase in confidence. The buying group now has over 11 people. In a lot of cases, it's more. And it makes their internal consensus building harder, as we talked about. So our part is to provide consistent, aligned messaging that helps them move forward faster. So those are a couple dear arties for the day. For today, please send in your ideas. I love to hear your different ideas, your challenges, and even solutions if you want to offer them up, what you've seen is successful. So let's wrap up for today. That's going to do it for today's show. Again, thanks to Nikhil Sarma for sharing all of your ideas. Please check out the references on the show page. Before you go, check out the Team Sales Development website, including the events page for details about previous and upcoming events. Contact me to discuss your plans for sales kickoff. This is the time to be doing the planning, or if you have seminars or other events that you want to improve sales results for your teams. I do offer keynotes, seminars, workshops, and CRM integrated tools. And here's the key that helps sales sell and to help avoid the rush to the demo. This isn't about a bunch of stuff. It's about helping you sell. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment on the show. Listen to the replays on your favorite channel or any of the podcast streaming services that are out there. Join me next week, 7 p.m. Eastern, for a final show in the season. I'll be talking with John Kerr of Mastering Technical Sales. As I mentioned, he's a big part of the book as well and wrote a foreword for it. He'll share his experiences with pre-sales and sales working together. And then I'm also going to have at the very end of this show a very special tribute segment. So please tune in for that. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week and put it in action and let us know how it goes. Take care. Thank you so much.